I was having a conversation with someone recently who's making about $15,000 per day in their business. And I was shocked. I'm not joking. This is a 100% true story. Shocked when I said, "Tell me about your SOPs." And they were like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, your SOPs." And they said, "What's an SOP?" And it was like, "You're in real trouble." One of the things that happens in businesses all the time, because we can grit ourselves into success. We can late night ourselves into success. We can forge through the fire and the pain of what it is required to build a business, but only to a certain level. And I see so many people when they're in the stages of going from six figures to seven figures stuck at one important bottleneck, and that is systems. And it is the very thing that I see more than ever that keeps people stuck. Your systems and your operations are the cornerstone to everything that you're going to build in your business. And here's the reality. If you are the system, you do not have a business, you have a job, and you cannot quit. Ask me how I know. When I built my first company, I made a huge mistake. I made myself the everything, the marketing, the CEO, the finance guy, the accountant, the bookkeeper, the marketer, the sales closer, the appointment setter, and the guy doing the thing because I didn't know better. And I was young and I was like 24, 25. And I was so lost in all of the idea about the fear of letting go to have other people help me. And the thing that I discovered through honestly just a lot of hard work and really poor mistakes that I probably could have avoided was that when you are the constant bottleneck, you are always going to be fighting fires. You are always going to be dependent for everything happening in the business, and your systems are going to be the reason why you can't go to the next level. I was talking with my team actually just this morning, and I said, guys, one of the things here we do is we have SOPs for SOPs. Standard operating procedures are only a part of the system. When I talk about system, I'm talking about everything from your SOPs to your hiring and firing documentation, employee handbooks, the way that you do everything, the way that you document everything, and the way that you set up the business as a framework so that you, depending on where you are and what role you have, you can focus on your job and your tasks and allow your team to execute the rest. If you are always working in the business, you have a job. You are not an entrepreneur. You are not a leader. You are not a business owner. You are an employee. And that's a really hard reality to sit in because I get it. Sometimes you're like, man, I have so much fear and this person I'm going to bring in is not going to do it as well as me. Here's what I can promise you. If you create standard operating procedures and you actually have a structure of operations to the business, then what happens is you create this space where it's not anything other than holding accountability for your team members to execute at the highest level based on the things that they know that they're supposed to do because you have a system and process in place. And guess what? When you have this in place, you get to avoid burnout. You're able to scale. And guess what? When mistakes happen, you don't have to try to figure out why they happened. You have a point of reference for understanding it. And people get lost in systems because, to tell you the truth, it is the most, generally speaking, systems and processes are the most boring and arduous part of building business. They are also the most important. Because trust me, there are nights that I've had in 22 years of leadership and 17 years as an entrepreneur where I am sitting here at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday writing an SOP or talking to AI to create the SOP or whatever it is about just putting something into place so we have a standard practice. So I'm going to share something with you. I'm going to tell you a story about systems and why they're so important. When I was in my very first career, outside of hustling, that's a whole other story for another day. I learned that systems were the cornerstone to business success. I worked for a fast food restaurant called Wendy's. You've probably heard of it. And I happened to work at the biggest Wendy's in the entire Midwest, where we were doing like $1 million in burgers and fries. And in the back room of Wendy's, there was training manuals for everything. I mean this legitimately, everything, top to bottom, from the way that you ring up an order to the way that you salt the fries to the way that you wrap the cheeseburger to the way that you put ketchup in the bag on top of the napkins, on top of the burger, next to the fries. Things I still remember like 22 years later. They're indoctrinated into me. And I thought to myself early on, because I'm a contrarian by nature, I was like, this is stupid. I hate this. I don't want to do this. And every week I had to train, especially when I went into management and then into general management training. I was just always training, always learning all about the systems. Fast forward, I land a job with corporate America. I'm working for a corporate company that's Fortune 10. Everything in that company was training. Our sales calls were training, systematized. Our closing, our script, systematized. Our lunches, which is part of the reason I left, systematized. Like I knew what time I was going to lunch every single day. Everything day in, day out was on a system that was built in process that worked the way that it worked for one reason. Because when you have systems in place, then you have the ability to scale. And when you have churn in the business and you lose an employee, now it's plug and play because we're going to lose employees. That's just the nature of it. But if you don't have those things in place, guess what you're always doing? You're always firefighting. And so when I started my first company, the very first thing that I did is I sat down, I created systems for everything. We hadn't even made $1 yet. And I was like, I'm going to create a system for everything here. And the reason that I'm going to do that is so that when we have revenue come in, I can focus on one thing: revenue driving activities. Because if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, a leader, you're really tied to revenue, because the game that we're playing in business is not go help as many people as humanly possible for free. It's go help as many people as humanly possible by making an offer that they can purchase that helps them solve their problem. We can't do that if we're always solving internal problems, both with ourselves and with the business. And so the thing that we have to get into is, well, what systems and processes do I need to create so I have operations in my company that allow me to focus on my job description and the things that I need to get done? And so in that very first company, all I did was systems. My next company, systems. The third one after that, systems. And then 10 years ago, I came in a company, which I'm now a partner in, and I just went in and I said, there are no systems here. I don't know how you guys survived this long, but now we're going to build systems. And we built them all. And everyone hated me. I'm not going to lie. It was like I walked in and I was like cleaning up town like a sheriff walking into the wild, wild west, where dudes with gold teeth were just running wild and doing whatever they wanted. I was like, nope, I'm the new sheriff in town. We're going to go and do this. 10 years later, so thankful we have done that, right? And then here in Unbroken Business Support Group, same thing. There are systems everywhere, top to bottom, in everything that we do. There are SOPs for everything that we do, job descriptions for every single employee. There are handbooks that everyone has to go through, from our marketing, our branding, our people, our teams, our hiring, our sales calls, our fulfillment, our community, our customer service. There is a system and there is a process for every single element of the business. And that is why we will outshine where other people fail. And that's why where you are right now, if you're at 6 figures and you have not pushed through to 7, I can tell you it's probably a systems issue. If you haven't made it to 6 figures yet, it's very likely a market fit issue, right? So the difference, 0 to 100,000, you can get there just working your face off. It's not that difficult. Getting to even 300,000 still kind of feels the same. In fact, one of my businesses, I was a solopreneur when I first started coaching over a decade ago, because I was doing a couple things at the same time. I built that company up with only myself because I had systems and automation in place. Now, not automation like we have today. Holy crap. I wish I had AI technology and Claude code and automation like we have today, but I built all of that up in systems. And then when I brought people in, I plugged them in and we scaled the business, right? And so what you have to look at is anywhere from 0 to about 300 grand, you can kind of get there on your own. I don't recommend it. You're exhausting yourself. You're probably watching this right now and you're about to fall asleep because you're so tired. But to get to 7 figures, you're going to have systems and structures in place that are about operations. And operation fragility is going to create a ceiling, and you're going to cap out the revenue potential of the brand because there's no one in place to go and execute. And so, day one, what I would tell you is that you have to take a step back as the founder, as the entrepreneur, as the leader, as the manager in the role. And you have to ask yourself, if I stepped away from the business for a week, what would happen? Because I have friends who don't take vacations because they can't, because they don't implement systems. And I used to be that guy. And I had to learn the hard way that you are going to burn yourself out. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to think about, how do I replicate myself? That's really the question you're always asking yourself. How do I replicate myself? And so there are three things that I want you to work on over the next month that'll give you what you need to go to the next level in your systems. One, you need to identify the single biggest operational bottleneck in the business that requires more of your attention than it should. I don't know if that's hiring. I don't know if that's marketing. I don't know if that's branding or people. I don't know if that's sales. I don't know what that is in your business, but you need to take a moment, take a step back and identify what is the single biggest bottleneck that is keeping you from growing. Because there is something that's happening with your time that's pulling you away from the business. So when I sit down with my team, we all have job descriptions. My job description is content, community, and consulting. That's it. If it's not one of those three things, I don't do it. I do not set up webinars. I do not set up funnels. I do not set up email blasts. I do not set up any of that. This is my window. This is where I live. Now, I still do marketing because this is marketing. This is creating a conversation to build a know, like, and trust factor. So the thing that I have to take into consideration every day is, where does my energy not belong? Where am I getting in the way? Now, that's a talent conversation sometimes when you're like, well, they can't get it done. And that's a different conversation. But when you create systems and processes for the day to day, plus the implementation, which we do a ton of with AI, there's so many different ways that you can take a step back. Then you need to actually get into this place of simplifying your priorities. You cannot be here and 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 here all at once. You just can't. It's impossible. And when you do that, the things that require your attention don't get your attention, and thus you stagnate and you get stuck. And that's not a good place to be. Next, now this is one of the things that I talked about earlier, especially systems, is you have to create a visible ownership of tasks in the business. The best way to do this is with job descriptions. I had a great friend. We were sitting down at a mastermind like 5 years ago, and we were talking about job descriptions. And she said something to me that I still think about today. And she's like, if it's not on the job description, I don't do it. And I was like, yeah, I get that. I totally relate, because that is the reality of what it means to be in a position of working on the business and not in the business. And I have a really interesting story that I'm going to share with you one day in the future about how you can actually do this better. But today, where you are, the very first thing that you need to do is start. So if you go to Unbroken BSG, like Unbroken Business Support Group, there is a systems download right there on the website where you can download and learn exactly how to implement systems and operations into your business if this is the biggest bottleneck in the infrastructure. So getting systems in place, especially if you're creative like me. I'm a creative. I am the guy who is the visionary. I'm not a great integrator. I can integrate. I just prefer not to. It's not my strong suit. And so I have to have an amazing integrator to come in. But everything in my vision requires a system, requires process, and requires operation. And the only way that you're going to go to where you want to be is we have to get these things in place. So I want you to think about where you're stuck in the business because the systems and operations don't exist. And instead of owning a business, you just give yourself a job. Spend some time, dive into all of that information. I know it's a lot, and you're probably like, where do I start? Start at where you are. I gave you 3 steps that you can work on over the next 30 days. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and be unbroken. I'll see you soon.